Okay, so I want to talk about how POC, or more accurately, color cast people, how they are not oppressed. Okay, people of color, color cast people are not oppressed. Okay, so what are some reasons why they will say that they are oppressed, or sort of victims, or marginalized, colonized, whatever they want to say? Well, one thing they'll point to is poverty, right? Color cast people have higher rates of poverty, especially brown cast, black cast people. Well, tens of millions of white cast people are in poverty. So you can't just simply use that as proof or evidence that you are oppressed or exploited or whatever, because then why are they poor? The same reason they're poor is the same reason that you're poor. Okay? Because if you're saying white, a lot of these color cast people will say that white cast people can experience oppression or aren't oppressed, then why are tens of millions of them poor? It's the same reason that you're poor, right? And then color cast people will try to cite like these historical instances or events, like the Trail of Tears, or the industrial kidnapping complex, but those ended hundreds of years ago. So yes, there could be some sort of rollover effect, some type of echo, but that's basically irrelevant now. And then tens of millions of white cast people or white identified people are poor. So it's basically for the same reason, which I'm not really going to get into, or maybe I'll talk about that. But that the poverty checkbox, erase it. Okay. So how else could you be oppressed or exploited? What's even the point of saying color cast, this, that, and the fourth? They'll point to say police brutality. Okay, that doesn't exist. It's not true. Um, right, Amerindian people with sort of Amerindian or tribal caste and black caste people will say they experience high rates of police brutality. No, um, tribal caste people, American Indian associated people, and black caste people commit a disproportionate amount of crime. Okay, like white caste people, they're about 50% of the population, white identified people, but they commit about 50% of crime. Black caste people, black identified people, I think they're like 13% of the population, but they commit almost double that in crime. If you commit more crime, you're going to have more encounters with cops. If you have more encounters with cops, you're going to be shot and killed more, right? 98, 90% of the time, cops are not just going up to shooting a black identified person. It's in the midst of a crime. They're not going up to a tribal caste person, an Amerindian caste person, and shooting them. It's in the midst of a crime. Sometimes violent crimes, right? And color cast people commit a disproportionate amount of street crime, muggings, this, that, and the fourth. And when you have more encounters with cops, you get shot more. When you average that all out, everyone experiences this police brutality or being killed by cops at the same rate. You're not experiencing it more. It's just a false narrative. I understand why people would believe that because of what's shown on the media, but that's just like a conquer and divide strategy. That's just to perpetuate the caste system and those types of things. Because white identified people, dozens of them are unarmed, are killed by cops every single year. How many of them do you know? Why aren't their why aren't their murders shown on TV? Why don't they ever trend on Twitter? Because law enforcement and media coordinate not to put it out, to just perpetuate that black versus white narrative, to perpetuate the conquer and divide narrative, and that type of thing. Tribal caste people are the most shot by cops. How often do they trend or are shown on camera? They just choose not to show it. But tribal caste people American Indian caste people also commit a disproportionate amount of crime. And then we don't even really know about that because they're so romanticized and infantilized, mostly by like white caste liberals. Like they're like nature loving magical shamans or something. No, y'all are out here committing a bunch of crime. Not judging you, but so we can take that off. So what's left? How are color caste people oppressed? How are color class people exploited? They'll cite different things like representation. Well, black caste people are overrepresented in the media, which isn't a surprise. Everyone feels obligated to put them into the media. Every single show they're in it. Uh, that includes like dark brown representation because you know the crown cast people are bringing these African immigrants, replacing y'all heritage North Americans. A lot of them are brown. You know, Get Out, Us, Tenet, Black Panther, all these other TV shows. Like black identified people are overrepresented in the media, which was largely done by manipulation and bullying. Overrepresented. Then you have like Latino cast people complaining, "Oh, we're not in the media." No, you identify and perceive yourself as white coded. Like when you go see Spider Man, you see yourself in that character. You check white on the census. You perceive yourself as white. You want to be white coded. You worship a white coded Jesus. But then you have that sort of Latino coded representation. You just want extra representation. It's like, how Asian cast people, all their characters have blonde hair, blue eyes. That's how they perceive themselves. You're like the same way. You imagine and you perceive yourselves as white coded passing, as white cast people. That representation is your representation. But then you also have Latino coded representation. Okay, and it's the same thing with Asian cast people. You don't mind it. In Asia, they just guzzle down white cast media because they want to be white cast. But then you also want your representation too. Okay. Then you'll cite other little things like house ownership, which is like old. So we can stop using that too, in which it makes some sense on that level. It wasn't, you could, like, they distort stuff like that. A lot of color cast people, which I'll get to, because you guys like to weaponize victimhood and that type of thing. But that wasn't that you couldn't get house loans. You couldn't get house loans for houses in like white cast majority areas, which makes sense on some level because segregation just ended. How are you gonna we couldn't just kumbaya magically live next to each other? Okay, but then it's like that's a civic issue, that's a political issue. Like reform the system if it's such an issue to get a loan. Like it's something's not clicking, something's not making sense. But then it's like that's a behavior issue. Maybe there's low ownership in black cast people because how are the poorest demographic most obsessed with luxury brands? Maybe if you saved your money instead of buying it on crap, you could afford more house ownership. You know what I'm saying? So no, color cast people aren't oppressed or exploited. Okay. Um okay. And then yes, I mean, yes, you're exploited. Color cast people are exploited in a sense, but color cast people exploit other people as well, not just via the crimes that are committed against everyone else, even against your own so-called people. But it's more in a situation like Do you think those women in like abusive relationships, not even abusive, but like those toxic, violent relationships, do you think they're oppressed? Do you think they're exploited? No, they can't be. It's a consensual, voluntary relationship. They're not uh, oppressed. They're not exploited. They're addicts. They're just addicts. They're addicted to toxic, codependent relationships. That's what color cast people are. You can't. This is consensual. This is voluntary. You can't be um, exploited in a consensual, voluntary relationship. This is just a toxic, codependent relationship. That's it. Does things suck for that woman? Is she sometimes attacked and this, that, and the fourth? Yes, but then why didn't she just break up with the person and leave? Have you ever tried talking to those women? And I'm not saying like it only happens to women and that all women act like that. This is just the narrative, right? Society approaches like women like they're the poor little victim, but they're not. They're it can't be an abusive relationship and they're not oppressed exploited. It's a voluntary consensual relationship. All you have to do is leave or don't get into a relationship in the first place. Don't ignore 1,000 red flags. Don't become dependent on another person. You know that half of relationships end in divorce. You know 1 in 3 are going to be abusive. So why did you do that? Maybe you just wanted to do that. You wanted to play the victim, but you're an addict. You're addicted to toxic um, relationships. You want to pretend like you're in a telenovela or a soap opera. You like the intention. Same type of thing. You can't be like look at that's just not possible. And it's like with people of color, ignoring 1,000 red flags. You voted for Kamala Harris, who arrested color cast people for marijuana, while other people are becoming rich for selling it in other states when it's all illegal at the federal level. You ignored 1,000 red flags about Kamala and Biden, just like those women who ignore thousands of red flags. Like you're not, you're not exploited. You're not oppressed. You're an addict. And just like how those women can get benefits, like they have access to domestic abuse shelters. They're the ones who get the empathy and the sympathy. They're the ones who will get child support payments. They're the ones that the judges will give them the child in these child dispute cases. It's the same thing. Color cast people weaponize victimhood to get handouts and attention, even though it's crumbs, right? So whereas yes, again, it's the shorter end of the stick in a sense, but that's just more pathetic than anything. Like those women do have a shorter end of the stick, but that's their choice. Okay. Like, why did you vote for them? It makes no sense. Like, you're just playing yourself. Okay. If you weren't so busy playing yourself, if you weren't so busy playing the victim, you could get your fair share, right? It's sort of like, but you guys would rather take being babied and infantilized and coddled and get your crumbs and your handouts. You're too busy doing that to get your fair share. Like, look at like Indigenous Day. Why do we turn Columbus Day into Indigenous when there's already an Indigenous Peoples Month? Why do you need a month and a day? Like you guys rather they're just coddling you, they're flattering you, they're giving you crumbs and handouts. It's the same thing with like Juneteenth. There's already a Black History Month that could just fit under there, but you guys rather take flattery and love bombing and crumbs because we learn. Look at money. White cast people are on every, a quarter, every single piece of money. Monuments everywhere, Mount Rushmore, giant Abraham Lincoln statues everywhere. Street names are named after them. Schools are named after them. Even Confederate generals. Uh, Thousands, hundreds. thousands of movies, historical films, um, about them, high budget. That's all who we learn about in school. It's white coded history, whitewashed history. For 14 years, every day is White History Day. That's why they're the only reason why they give you a month. Scraps, crumbs, which you guys readily guzzle down. You're playing yourself, okay? Um, not oppressed, not exploited. And it's the same thing with um, voting Democrat. Who cares if they're the lessers of two evil? In actuality, they're just one party. They just play good cop, bad cop. Like when Democrats put that $15 minimum wage in the pandemic relief packet, they did it on purpose because they knew Republicans would vote it down. That didn't even make sense to put it in the package. A $15 minimum wage doesn't even make sense because rent's like cheaper in Mississippi. It doesn't need to be $15 in the whole in the whole state, United States. It makes no sense. It just sounds good. It just looks good. And of course, you wouldn't put it in a pandemic relief package. That makes no sense. They just did it on purpose so they could vote it down. But that doesn't even matter because it's like how long has black cast people been complaining about police brutality since Rodney King? Nothing has changed. You're still whining and complaining. It doesn't matter if they're less evil. They're ineffective. If someone broke into your house, you hire someone to be security, and someone breaks into your house. You hire them again, and someone breaks into your house. You hire that security team again, and someone breaks into your house. If you hire them a 10th time, that's not oppression and exploited. That's playing the fool. That's just bad choices. Why do you keep voting for them? Because they flatter you and baby you? Like, it makes no sense. Or look how color cast people, you guys acknowledge that the media and news is like a propaganda network, right? When it's a white cast mass shooter, they talk about how he went to Bible study. When it's a black cast person, they talk about how he had, or brown person, they talk about how they had marijuana in their system. Okay, um, and all sorts of distortion like that. But then you go and watch the uh, movies, right? Those same companies own these movie theater companies and that type of thing, movie corporations, and so you're basically funding your own propaganda network. Okay, you're funding your own propaganda network, um, because these media companies own these news corporations. How can you acknowledge that these new corporations are corrupt and they push out propaganda, but then you go watch movies and TV shows made by these same companies? That's not oppression. That's not being exploited. That's bad choices. That's like color cast people living in a hotel and it's being shot by a tank and they're screaming, "Help me, help me, police brutality." And then you're running out, you run out of the hotel periodically and refill up the gas tank, then run back in the hotel and start screaming again. It makes no sense. That makes no sense. You're not exploited, you just make bad choices. Like, and then it just gets into like, I will never support color cast people anymore because it's like you'll be on dating apps and like there'll be people asking for a plug, which is basically asking for a marijuana, for weed. Anyone selling it. So color cast people, y'all be scurrying around like rats in alleys looking for weed when there's people all around the country becoming rich from it. When it's illegal at the federal level, you could literally sue the government. They're arresting you for a plant that's being sold around the country. That people are becoming rich for it. Mostly white cast people. You don't do anything. You could sue the government. You could start a petition to get it legalized in your state. But liberals and Democrats, they have baby and coddled you so much You have become spoiled and you just expect everyone else to do things for you. Color cast people are so infantilized, so babied. That you're inactive. You don't even do anything. Like what? That's freaking crazy. Okay, like this doesn't make sense. So no, color cast people are not, um, or like, and then I don't think you guys want solutions because these different identities have become casts, they've become cults, and these cults have become brands. Like black is a brand, like Prada, like Gucci. Latino is a brand, like Nike. Asian, Amerindians, it's a brand. That's like when they get mad when like if you're wearing eyeliner that makes your eyes look Asian, as if a population owns those eyes when it's found all around the world. It's because you're violating their trademark. Why black ass people don't want you wearing braids or dreads? Because that takes attention away from them. You're violating their trademark. It's a brand. I think there was like tribal cast people that there was like a fashion show or something. They had feathers and they got mad. Y'all don't own feathers. They tried to trademark feathers. Okay, that's what cultural appropriation about is about. You're violating their brands. It has to become brands. Okay, and the angle of the brands for color cast people is victimhood. You guys are weaponized victimhood, is which is why you don't want solutions to anything. Like tribal cast people will talk about missing indigenous women. They don't own the term indigenous. Okay, I don't know why you want to be called that anyways when it's like it's dehumanizing. We only usually call plants and animals indigenous. Why don't we say indigenous European? They're indigenous to there. But they're like missing indigenous women. But that's it. You see how they just stop there? It's never about laws or policies or overhauls or changes or solutions. Because if there was a solution, they wouldn't be able to weaponize these deaths. Like these brands are also cults. Like black is a cult, Amerindian is a cult, Latino is a cult. It's a self-worshiping cult. But these cults, they and even like the alphabet community, LGBT cult, they sacrifice members of their own cult to sort of recharge these victimhood brands. Black cast people like when black identified people are killed by cops because they're like, see, we are the victims. Where are my handouts? Where's my representation? Money, please. They like when black people are killed by cops. They like it. Tribal cast people like when there's missing indigenous women. And you can tell because they never care about laws or policies or overhauls. Anything that would change it. And it's never about solutions. Before the bodies are even cold, they're just like saying, see, we're victims too. It's weaponizing victimhood. It's weaponizing martyrdom. It's weaponizing survivorship, hardship. Okay. Color cast people don't want solutions. Color cast people don't want solutions because that would obliterate their whole identities. Like black, that doesn't. Why do you identify as a color? Why do you identify as a debunked concept? There's no evidence for the concept of race. Why are you identifying as indigenous, like native? Sometimes because you keep the Indian Bureaus of Affairs when you want to get your handouts. Handouts for what? I didn't do anything to you. Current taxpayers didn't do anything to you, so why is my money going to you for things I didn't do to you that ended hundreds of years ago? The Mayan Empire wasn't built with hugs. This wasn't some unified utopia. You mostly died because you didn't have immunity to these diseases, and then you got killed in warfare. You lost. Yes, we should have approached it more humanely, but why are you guys still getting cut checks? And then there's that whole thing like stolen land. Like color cast people are not these oppressed victims of the world. How could you be when too many of you are in the military? Stolen land. We hijacked Hawaii. Y'all were in the military when we hijacked Puerto Rico. We're currently hijacking Puerto Rico, but you're just whining about stolen land. We're helping Zionist Jews displace Palestinians, but you're whining about stolen. You are. You're in the military, Amerindian, tribal caste people. Black caste people think they're like own the gold medal for the oppression Olympics, but you are in the military. Y'all are massacring people in Vietnam. How can you be the most oppressed, exploited people on the planet when you're massacring people, villagers in Vietnam, when you're blowing up civilians in Iraq, in Afghanistan, in Africa, and helping Zionist Jews kill Palestinians because the Sky Daddy said that that's their home? It's impossible. They're like, they shot a black kid. You blew up kids, and we helped Saudi Arabia blow up a school bus in Yemen. What's your point? You're so oppressed, but there's, um, you know, Amerindian associated people picking our fruits and vegetables. You're taking your EBT card to Walmart to buy fruits and vegetables that Amerindians picked in the summer sun for 12 hours a day, but you're the most oppressed people on planet Earth. No, you're not. Impossible. How are you oppressed? How are you exploited? Every single checkbox criteria is false or distorted or not happening or exaggerated or voluntary or consensual or perpetuated by you, supported by you. You support your own propaganda networks. Like people with Hawaiian heritage like are embracing these like white caste people who, you know, freaking destroyed your originator society. Huh? It's the same with women. You're not oppressed, you're not exploited. Right? Look at domestic abuse. Domestic abuse doesn't exist. Domestic, that implies house, which implies a door. Walk out the door. Abuse can't be. It's a consensual voluntary relationship. How could that be abusive? It's freestyle BDSM. A consensual voluntary situation or relationship can't be abuse. Are you kidnapped? That's a different story. No, wait, it's a consensual voluntary relationship. It's a freestyle BDSM. Walk out the door. Don't ignore 1,000 red flags. Don't become dependent on another person. If you had a vocational skills, a savings, or a strong family or friend network, it would not even be an issue. Just leave. Get a job. Use your savings. Stay with a friend or family member. But then you're talking about domestic abuse. We need to abolish domestic abuse services and shelters. Women have made it very clear that they're not to be infantilized. People of color said, do not infantilize us. But then you also want to be infantilized and coddled and treated like babies. But we have to guess when and only on your terms. Domestic abuse shelters are basically like an adult female tracking system. For what? Abolish it. Go to a homeless shelter. Why are we tracking adult human females? Like you're infants. Leave. Don't get in a relationship. Shoot them. It's like with that missing indigenous women. Don't go. You know what the solution to that is? Don't go missing. Like I could see essentially, but then that spread. Why don't you just get a gun and shoot them? And it was like mostly sex workers don't do sex work if it's that dangerous. Shoot the person. Like, how are you going missing? And then women, you're 50% of the population. You're 50% of the population. 50% of the population can't be oppressed. It's impossible. You're 50% of the population. Done. There. They don't. We have lower pay. Ask for a raise. You're 50% of the population. 50% of the population can't be oppressed. Okay, that has to be consensual or voluntary on some level, which wouldn't be oppression or exploitation. Yes, I believe patriarchy was real. Is it even exists anymore? But the only way that that was possible is that we were generally physically stronger and aggressive than you. But that's now irrelevant because, like, look at the U.S. You have widespread access to guns. Why don't you just, I don't know, shoot someone? Like, I mean, that edge is gone. So what's the issue? That's the only way patriarchy was able to be established and maintained. We were generally physically stronger than you, generally a bit more aggressive than you. That's real relevant. There's cops. Neighborhoods are safer. You have access to guns. The edge is gone. You don't want a solution because there was actually perks to patriarchy, but you want to keep all the perks, but you don't want any of the challenges of it. It's like the whole men should pay for women on a date. That was because that was dehumanizing, that was infantilizing. You weren't allowed to have checking accounts, you weren't allowed to vote, you weren't allowed to, um, you didn't have your own money, so that's why men paid for you. But now you do, but you still want men to pay for you. You want the perks of patriarchy, but none of the challenges of it. Like you use baby voice. Like, don't you dare mansplain to you, which is talking down to you like a child, but then you use baby voice. Then you make video commentary about Disney princess movies and call yourself a princess when the word queen is right there. You use baby voice. You call us daddy. Like, you want to cherry pick patriarchy, which is why patriarchy will not go down. You want to weaponize being a victimhood, right? You're like, you rape us. Here are our demands. It's like, wait, what? You're weaponizing rape? You're the same thing. You're a woman cultist. You like when women are raped. You like when women are killed because you use those. It's like necromancy or something. Like, you use it to recharge your victimhood brand, your tragedy brand. You watch Handmaid's Tale to recharge your victimhood tragic persona, so you can have immunity and make these demands and that type of thing, right? You're harvesting women. You're sacrificing women to recharge your victimhood tragic woman brand. You don't want solutions, okay? In pre-industrial, pre-modern, pre-Abrahamic societies, the women were topless all around the world. So this was working, you know, working, sweaty, breasts shaking, dancing. The men were just standing there. If rape was an issue, they wouldn't have done that. This was in Africa, Polynesia, Asia, up until like the 1900s, the mid 1900s, maybe later. But the Christians were like, cover up. It's a modest. It was a rape. But then there's like, women, I hate men, castrate men. Uh, it's this overactive, overstimulating society that's the issue. Overly stressful. We're erotically charged while being simultaneously sexually repressed. It is a factor. I'm not saying there's an excuse for rape, but it's a factor. And we're saying, hey, let's shift out of this industrial modern society, this overactive society, this overstimulating society, right? But then you guys don't want to leave because you like all the benefits and perks of it. You like your current positions, but you don't like any of the downsides. You don't like any of the challenges of it. They were topless. It wasn't an issue. This is the cause. We say leave, you don't want to leave. So that's just your issue. You're not oppressed, you're not exploited. This is consensual, this is voluntary, which means it can't be oppression or exploitation. We're addicts. We're addicted to toxic relationships. We're addicted to modernity. We're addicted to overactivity. We're addicted to overstimulation. Okay, that's it. We want all of the perks and benefits, but none of the challenges of it. Have you guys ever tried talking to those women in toxic, violent relationships? You try to talk reason to them, since they kind of avoid it, or their eyes glaze over, and they're just like, "Huh? Why don't you just leave him? Why don't you do this?" Mm-hmm. They're addicts. They're addicted to toxic, violent relationships. They're addicted to freestyle BDSM. When that happens, there's all those hormones, endorphins, cortisol, um, all those different hormones and those type of things. We're addicted to those. We're addicted to testing our limits. Where people have become disassociated with society. Everyone thinks their life is a telenovela or a soap opera, or they're a main character. This is real. It's not fictional. It's not a movie. It's not a TV show. But why they look? They have a chance of being. If people and there people ask like, why would someone do that? Why do people do BDSM? What's the opposite of freestyle? I don't know, like orderly BDSM, scripted BDSM, whatever it's called. That's why people do freestyle BDSM. People are doing freestyle BDSM with cops. Like color cast people are not like they're like the jail rates. People they don't care about. People like fighting with cops in this freestyle BDSM way. People like um people don't mind going to jail. Color cast people don't mind jail. A lot of them they're having barbecues in there. They have pets. There's freaking transsexual concubines. They're living it up. They work their jobs. There's no mass shootings in prisons. There's no car accidents in prisons. You're not getting killed by a drunk driver. Yes, it's dangerous. So is this out here. You're eating junk food. Like I was wondering, I'm like fighting, campaigning for like parolees or whatever, felons to get their voting rights restored. But then I was like, wait a second. Um, why don't they ever organize and do it? I never see big campaigns against them. There's millions of you, hundreds of thousands. Why don't you organize, put a protest campaign, something? They're spoiled. That's what color cast people are. A lot of you guys are just infantilized, spoiled people waiting for handouts, even though it's a short end of the stick. A lot of you don't mind being on EBT and eating at Dollar Tree, but Dollar Tree is just not food. It's old, it's rotten, it's from like dirty farm fish farms in China. It's chemicals. It's GMO. It's Frankenfood. But you don't care. They don't want prison reform. They don't want voting rights. And then I don't like lots of color cast people. You guys protect other color cast people. Like it's a cult. Black cast people blindly protect black cast people. When there's like um when there's like something going viral, like a police shot someone, black cast cultists assume that it was a black identified person that was innocent. Cops assume it was the cop that was innocent. Why? The cop cultists already acknowledged that there could be bad apples. There's already been all these videos of them being like corrupt and shady and toxic and violent. But then you assume that it's there it was justified. Why? There's no reason to. We already know black identified people murder people, do criminal activity, have killed cops unjustly. But when it seems like when it's a cop when it's a cop that killed people, they're like, there's not an apology like, oh, I jumped the gun, this or that. They're just like, oh, they just slink away. When it's like a black identified people was justifiably killed, they don't say like, oh, I spoke out of turn. They just slink away. Bill Cosby should be in jail, but black cult men blindly protect him. Okay, Latino, Amerindian, you guys just soak up in your romanticization. White cast liberals just use you as white savior batteries. When you're like so many of you are in abject poverty, eating trash, committing crime. No, you don't love nature. You have an iPhone. Cosplaying as your heritage. For cool points, for hype points. You're not Cherokee. You don't speak the language. You're Métis, if that. Then Asian cast people push all the brown yellow people to the back to ride this hype, to exploit this sort of, we've been programmed to see light features as good, and they're just exploiting that. Like, this is just a mess. It makes no sense. Half of color cast people are white cast. People with mestizo heritage origins identify as white. Genetically yellow people want to be white. Soon they will start identifying as white. They are white cast people. Meghan Markle is white. Sorry. Drake is white, pretty much. White adjacent. His son is white. You're not fooling people putting his heads in dreads and braids. But wait, color cast people are not going to cancel their fans. You know what they eat, but you don't know your own politicians, your local politician's name. What's your governor's name? What's your mayor's name? Not that that matters. It's a corrupt system that should be torn down. But still, color cast people are just lazy, entitled, spoiled, selfish brats. Pretty much. That's why you're in the state that you're in. That's why there's no point of caping for you, helping you. Like, look at the pandemic. Some of you are essential workers. That was the best time to be like, hey, we demand higher wages, this and the fourth. No. Literally, like, you're an essential worker and you're still being paid crumbs while teachers, professors in colleges are being paid, have two houses because they parrot information, trivial factoids all day. Do you know how many people don't? They just sign contracts and eat out all day. 20% of people don't work at all and they get paid six figures. The space force is just made up so that white cast people can get jobs. And like, and it doesn't even matter. Look at color cast people are in these jobs. Color cast people are exploiting color cast people. Okay. Black cast cops are killing black cast people. Like, what are we talking about here? Like, this has run its course. It's a joke at this point. There's no, if you're a white cast person, a white identified person, stop helping. I would suggest, I can't tell you what to do, but I would suggest stop helping color cast people. Some of you just do it as like, it's a performance. Democrats, liberals. It's a performance. But some of you guys had your hearts in the right place. Don't. One, it's infantilizing us. We don't do anything for ourselves because we just expect other people to do it. If you clean up for your kids all their lives, their mouths are going to be a mess because they've been conditioned for someone else to do it. Entitled, spoiled. Okay, and two, color cast people don't do anything. Color caste people aren't exploited. Color caste people aren't expressed. Why are there tens of millions of white caste poor people? The real system is it's an intelligence-based caste system. There's multiple types of intelligence, okay, and it's basically if based around um, the system has been rigged for those with higher logical intelligence, right? There's practical intelligence, creative intelligence, intuitive intelligence, social intelligence, and logical intelligence. The system has been rigged for those with logical intelligence, right? Because those with high logical intelligence can get degrees. You can see it's rigged there. Like they're getting their debt forgiven. Did you go to trucker school? You had to pay your own money. Are you getting did you, why did you get no financial aid? Why couldn't you get a loan that was later forgiven? All you guys doing is paying for your own school while you go to college, you can get financial aid, you get loan forgiveness. And then these degrees are pointless. They're being spoon-fed trivial factoids with no practical application. Half of these courses should take a fraction of the time because they're making you take pointless classes that should have been done in a week, that could be done in 3 days, that are totally pointless, or like things like fine arts that have no purpose, distorted history that's pretty much fake. 90% of history is like fiction, semi-fiction, distorted, cult fan fiction. Yet you're teaching it. Okay? Most people with degrees, their jobs aren't hard. They have the menial jobs. Of course, because they're learning trivial factoids with no practical application. 20% of you are just sign contracts all day and eat out at fine restaurants. Another 20% of you are just like glorified clerks. You could have learned your job in a day. You go to send pointless emails and go to pointless meetings, and then you clerk typist activities. Another chunk of you are teachers, which is pointless. You just spout trivial factoids all day. There's no purpose. Like learning subjects in school is like learning how to ride a bike. There's a small learning curve, and then once you know how to do it, you know how to do it. You don't learn how to ride a bike and then go to bike school for 9 months. But look at something like algebra. Most of us learned it in a few days. Most of us had it in a week, but then we learned it for 9 months of the school year. Homework, work problems, like why? We know how to do it. It's not about school's not about learning. It's indoctrination. It's white caste indoctrination, and it's turning us into compliant, obedient, robotic parrots that follow orders. Our jobs are menial. Teachers just say the same thing over and over and over again, spoon feeding us information, shutting down our curiosity, our real intelligence. Professors are being paid how much? You can just listen to a recording, get taught by a computer program, a video, a computer, AI. Or there's no point because it's just pointless, trivial factoids with no practical application. Everything should be a trade school. And then the rest of you, your job might be a little bit harder, but then it's just logical work, and you were born with a higher logical intelligence. Okay? It's just rigged. That's the real caste system. There's no race caste system. Race isn't real. There's an appearance-based caste system, black caste, white caste, Latino caste, but now it's just like a conquer to control us, conquer and divide, and that type of thing. A few perks and privileges, but that's about it. The main caste system is an intelligence-based caste system. You practical types, right? You architects, you people working in like drivers and like laborers and like package handlers and shippers and all that, fast food workers, practical types, you're just being exploited. Okay? You don't have a higher logical intelligence, but it doesn't mean anything. They don't do anything. Their jobs are menial. You saw that with the essential workers. Okay? That's why those poor white identified people, they just don't have a high logical intelligence. But they work, a lot of them do work hard, contributing jobs, dangerous jobs, which you guys are paid more, but you're so busy being spoiled and addicted to this trash handouts and flattery and love bombing and being pitted against each other, you don't try to dismantle this intelligence based caste system. That's why a lot of black identified people are poor. Yes, you guys do have lower IQs, but IQ only measures one type of intelligence. They they kidnap you, right? They put you in jail and then they pay you $4 to do these fireman jobs because it's cheaper. Okay, because you have high practical intelligence, you have high athletic intelligence. But you're like blackety 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 black instead of saying like working class wages, living wages, educational reform, abolish the education system. Da, 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 da. You're too busy playing yourself or watching sports and eating your EBT sandwich or chasing Prada and Gucci or you're in jail. Okay, that's it. Color cast people have a higher rate of creative intelligence. That's why they just steal our creativity. You're making China millions of dollars being creative, right? They steal our clothing, they steal our music, they steal our culture because we have a higher creative intelligence. But we don't get to go to college for creative degrees because we don't have a higher logical intelligence to get them. So they have to steal our stories, and we just have these formulaic music and these formulaic TV shows because they only hire people with degrees, but they have this sort of manual creativity, this formulaic creativity. So that's the issue. Color cast people aren't oppressed or exploited. Women aren't oppressed and exploited. The LGBTQ plus AWYZ isn't exploited. They're the same too. They like when queer people die. Like it hasn't been happening because it's been getting safer and better. Like you guys ran out of things to do. You don't know what to do anymore. These TV shows are still like, I didn't believe this, like gay propaganda, but it's true. It's like you keep having shows like we're normal, we're normal. People already have either tolerated you or accepted you. It's not going to change. But you're still trying to say that you're normal. No one cares. You have nothing else to do. Like so many people, the deaths have went down to nothing. But there was like some person who got killed in Europe, and the alphabet cultists love that. Cultists love sacrificing their own. Please get out. You don't have to identify as any of these things. They're not real. Um, they will sacrifice you. They like when you die. They're like, ooh, see, we do need pride. What does pride parades do? How does dancing around in a shorts progress you in any ways? And what are you progressing for? You have marriage, this, that, and the fourth. I don't care what Republicans did because they ran out of ways to hide that they're just one corporate party, one white cast party, like one WASP party. The WASP are holding on for dear life. But no, none of you are oppressed. None of you are exploited. Okay, you're just addicts who are playing themselves. Spoiled, entitled, Karens.